what I do find interesting is the sort of dichotomy of the approaches. On the one hand, we have this, right? And because again, this was spurred on by Doge climbing under the covers, going the nitty gritty, or claiming to go in the nitty gritty of all of this stuff, super detailed. And then there's this sort of whole other line with the Trump administration of taking this hands-off approach to AI, where arguably is where we in fact need government regulation and oversight, because it's wild, wild west and all these concerns about it. And that so we've talked about some of those moves on the show in the past, but this week there is some additional escalation, I guess you'd call that, and that is that the Virginia's Republican governor, Glenn Youngkin, no,
Youngkin.
names, Youngkin, vetoed a bill that passed, which was an AI bill providing some of this level of governance that we've talked about. And what I found most shocking about this, it really wasn't that surprising that he vetoed it, right? This is, as we talked about, this is sort of the motion that we're starting to see. But if you look at the actual bill itself, what was in it, it was common sense stuff. It's like, hey, if you're going to be using AI that's going to dramatically impact people's life, you need to document it. You need to be able to justify that it's not biased. And I think part of what red flagged it was that it put the onus not just on the developers of the technology, but also heavily on the deployers of the technology. So if you're an enterprise, you're an insurance company using this AI, you could be held liable if you didn't do some of this work. And I think that one of the chambers of commerces came out pretty opposed to it, I think, because of that. But it's still common sense, and the market is going to drive it anyway. So I don't know. I'm not a big regulatory guy on this stuff, so I'm sort of on the fence about it, but I did find it interesting.
Yeah, I feel like the big challenge there is that companies don't make their compliance decisions based on one state's compliance issues. They have to take, of course, all 50 states into account, as well as, if you're an international company, every other country's standards. So having a specific standard or not having a specific standard for Virginia doesn't really mean much, other than to say perhaps you are allowing companies to develop in Virginia that may not be able to sell in certain markets. That's how it seems like to me. Compliance is just kind of one of these things that you have to deal with at the corporate level, and I feel like there isn't. The biggest difference is just saying Virginia companies may not be ready for global deployment.
Well, I think if I find anything sort of disconcerting about all of this, I agree with you. I think, and we've talked about this with the state of California, who's been aggressive on the other end of the spectrum. Also kind of like, you're probably not doing yourself any favors if you're pushing people away, which is why people like OpenAI and others have been so vehemently opposed to some of those measures. But more than anything, as we talked about, this has to be at the federal level. None of these companies play in just one state, or for the most part, even in one country. So this really is a federal and an international sort of thing that has to be dealt with. And I think the challenge is what we need is common sense and some reasonable frameworks that needs to be industry led. And if I'm concerned about anything, it's the fact that this has become this weird sort of cultural touch point where it's like this was signaling more than it is anything else. And that's a little bit frustrating to me. But
yeah, I think that it's likely that the US state that figures out the most reasonable AI governance will end up actually driving the market significantly. I think there's a decent chance California goes too far trying to push, but some other state will figure out what the right balance is. Maybe it's Washington, for instance. Maybe it's Texas, which
I want it to be Wyoming. I want Wyoming to be the next big AI hub in our country. I think that would be,
okay.
Everyone flocks to Wyoming.
Sure.
I don't know why.